loft. But again, these barns were built for family farming. They weren't built for big commercial farming. They had enough hay in here to feed their own animals. On the opposite side of the threshing floor is where the animals would be kept. And that is your traditional layout of what we call a English barn, English threshing barn. If you look up into the structure here, you note these beautiful rafters. These are log rafters. They're full length. Now the original barn, if you can see the pointer here, the original barn ends here, and everything below that is all addition. That's the shed we were looking at from outside. So the original barn goes from this plate over to this plate. These are your we call these, some people call them top plates. In modern construction, they're called top plates. We just call them plates or rafter plates because the rafters sit on them. Your rafters all start out as individual trees. Each one of these is an individual small tree that was hand-hewed on one side to make that flat to accept the roof sheathing.
It's a little laser pointer so we can show.
These beams up here are called your purlin plates, and their purpose is to support the rafters at mid-span. And you'll typically see that in any barn that's 30 feet or wider. Barns narrower than 30 feet, you'll typically not see a purlin system because you don't need it to support the rafters. They won't be long enough. This barn has a really nice steep roof pitch, which is one reason it's stayed in such good condition for this long. The snow sheds off it real quick. Up here in the north, more shallow roofs don't hold up so well to the snow load. So this is a very nice feature this barn has, and is definitely lent to its current condition. This is a beautiful feature right here. I saw this immediately when I walked in the barn. These little wind braces here, and you see how they oppose each other. And you can see they're even pegged into the rafters. See the little peg right there? Those you typically only see in hilltop barns. You can see them down here on the gable also, way down at the end near the window. If letting the light in, you can see opposing braces. And on the other end of the barn, you can see them. That's a really neat feature. There aren't a whole lot of barns around here that have those. They do that just to counter the heavy winds up here on high hilltops. So all of your lowland barns, they typically wouldn't go through that effort. So that's a fantastic feature and a defining feature of a barn that was built on a hilltop. So if we don't know where exactly in Savoy this barn came from, we can make an assumption that it was up on a hilltop somewhere. No, that's original. No, that's all original stuff.
How can you
Because it
tell?
was left here.
Well, you can tell because
From
of the
when he had
joinery.
it.
They
Never
would-
left, never
You have
took
to
it
just kind of make an assumption. They
Yeah.
typically wouldn't go through the effort to add something like that in.
1903 would have been something spiked on there.
Exactly. They would have just nailed it in 1903.
What
Yeah.
kind of wood is this?
We have, I believe, it looks to me like a softwoods for the rafters. Spruce or fir. It's I can't really tell. I can identify a lot of the hardwoods right off the bat. Softwoods I'm not so great with, especially in the round like this. You can tell for the most part from the knots, and maybe Will knows better.
What's that?
Maybe you know better the wood species in these rafters by looking at them.
Well, we were thinking spruce.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of spruce around here.
If you look at the knot patterns, yeah, we do have a lot of spruce around here. But you look at the knot patterns, and in general, a pine is going to grow in what's called whorls. You're going to have a ring of knots all in one spot around the tree, and then you're going to have clear wood for a foot or two, which represents a year's worth of growth of the tree. So this here, for instance, this could be pine because you have knots there, no knots, no knots, knots. In spruce, the knots are going to be random. If you look at a spruce tree, the branches grow off randomly. In pines, they grow in defining whorls. So, working our way down, another feature that defines this as of the more interesting category of English barns is this joint right here. And this is called a standard English tying joint. It's a joint that comes directly from our ancestors in England. Carpenters from England brought this joint over with them. It's a very, very intricate joint, and a joint that was pretty quickly discarded for ease of construction later on. What this is this is called the gun stock post, and if you look at it at the right angle, you can see it comes up straight, and then it jowls out a little bit here. It bulges out. So it's actually, if it's 8 by 8 at the bottom, it bulges out to probably 8 by 12 at the top. And what that actually is that's the tree upside down. You know how a tree grows and it flares into the ground or flares out of the ground? Well, that's the tree upside down, and the reason they did that is they needed that amount of wood at the top to affect that joint because there's a lot going on there. So they cut the tree down, they turn it upside down, they hew it square, and they leave that natural taper in one side so that it can stick out to accept this beam. So the post comes up, there's a tenon right there going up into this tie beam. This long beam here is called the tie beam. And also, in addition to that, this plate is going in behind that post. There's also a mortise and a peg in there. And then, in addition to all that, to tie it together even better, this has a half-lap dovetail, which is lapping over the top of this. So everything is all interlocked together. It's a fantastic joint. And it's something that was discarded, around 1810, 1820. By 1820, you don't see any more of this at all. 1700s, 1600s, it's all you see. Between 1790 and 1810 is when you stop seeing it. So that's a way to narrow down the date of this barn. It could be as early as 18 single digits. Now, I have seen only a few other barns that do this, where this is a combination of a couple different styles. Here we have the standard English tying joint style, and then you come to the next bent over, and you have what's called a drop tie joint. Now, the job the joint is doing is the same. It's a tying joint, it's in tension, it's holding the barn together, resisting roof load. But this one is much more simple, and this is what took over for the standard English tying joint. If you look, anybody can look at that and see how much easier that is to make. Your tie beam is coming into the post with a very simple mortise and tenon and a couple pegs, and it's coming in dropped down a little bit from the plate, which is why we call it a drop tie. So this barn has the standard English tying joints on the gables, but then they incorporated this easier method of using a drop tie joint into the two middle beds. So it's kind of a hybrid. We just took down and rebuilt one of these from Adams a couple years ago. And it was, at that time, I knew about the style, but it was the first one I've seen. So this is only the second one of the style I've actually seen and had an opportunity to do anything with. So I don't really see a lot of these. This is pretty interesting. Something else interesting about this barn that defines it as just pretty unique for the area is you notice this tie beam here doesn't go all the way across. It's cut out. Well, it's not actually cut out. It just it never did go all the way across. You go up higher on these posts. We can call these arcade posts. That's a name that comes from Dutch barns. Because they go all from the floor uninterrupted all the way up to the purlin plate and support the purlin plates. We call it an arcade post. Up here, there used to be a beam that went across here. Well, we see this all the time. Around 1850, the hay track was invented. And farmers all wanted to have this cool new hay track when it first came on the market. But they all had these pesky beams in their way. So, what the heck, we'll just cut that out of there. We don't need that beam. These guys at least dropped it down to here. They took that beam out and they moved it down. You know, they probably saw that it was there for a good reason. But often we see barns that have those cut out and they're just discarded and nowhere to be found. And the barn suffers because of it.
Well, they also put in the turnbuckles. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, can you see the rods? Right there.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, I was wondering
big
about
rod and
those.
turnbuckle. So,
That's mid-19th century those were put in?
the
tie
turnbuckle,
rod?
yeah,
Turnbuckle and
that's
tie
hand wrought rod, yeah.
Oh, wow. Thought it was newer.
Beautiful ladder we have here, and this is very interesting. I've never seen a ladder that had such a significant main post to it. Typically, the ladder's built into one of the main posts of the barn, but on the other side of the ladder rung, you'll just have something small, like a 3x4. Or sometimes you'll see a ship mast type ladder, where the holes are drilled all the way through the post, and these hand-shaved pegs, all those pegs are hand-shaved, those ladder rungs, are stuck through both sides and climb it up like you're climbing the mast of a ship. But this is really interesting. These two, this post belongs here, but this one does not really need to be there, other than to hold the ladder together. But if you look around in general, you can see that this barn is in really good condition. All the wind bracing is intact. Really nice, substantial girts. All these beams around the perimeter that the siding is nailed to, these are called girts. They don't do a whole lot of structural. They don't have a whole lot of structural use other than to give something to nail the siding to. But in this case, they're huge for just that purpose. They do give the barn some lateral stiffness. But their primary use, and sometimes these will just be a little wimpy half-round logs.
On the right-hand side, why does that arcade not go into the purlin?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I haven't figured out why they did that. That's unusual.